Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Well, I'm continuing to look at your suggestions associated with the whole new set of videos coming soon. I thought I would make another one of these encounters here involving a Skinwalker. And for this one, I thought it would make things just a little bit different. Instead of posting multiple stories into one video, I thought I would space things out and then just feature one encounter at a time. I was thinking the other day that maybe putting so many into each video kind of makes them get lost in transit. And so I wanted to make sure that each one has its own focus. But let me know what you guys think, if this is the way to go, or if y'all wanted to have more stories in one video together. I'd love to hear what your comments are. But this one comes from the reddit.com website subreddit called Skinwalkers, a user by the name of Garfould. Hope I'm saying that correctly. And they titled it, "We experienced something very unsettling in the desert." In fact, when I was reading this information, this is a long story and it's very detailed, but still, as the title says, very, very unsettling. So here's essentially what this person has to state. "Hey guys, everything I'm recounting in the story here is 100% true. I'm not going to try to persuade everyone that this is for certain a Skinwalker or anything, but this kept everything involved in this story out, including me, a pretty big skeptic when it comes to this sort of thing. I posted this here because I have no idea where else I could turn to. I'd also like to apologize for the length of this story in advance, as there's a lot that needs to be mentioned to set the scene. But here it goes. It all starts when a couple of friends, who I will refer to as Q, R, and S, and I wanted to have a guy's vacation and go camping somewhere back in May 2021. As a little backstory, Q is my best friend and S was R's younger brother. So we chose a spot that we had been to once before, but when we got there, we decided to drive out another 3-ish miles away from the previous destination. The area wasn't extremely in the middle of nowhere, as some of you might think. There was a dirt road wide enough for a decent-sized truck to go up and down the road with ease. So once we decided on a place to camp, we realized that not a soul was in the general area for probably another mile. The only evidence that there was anyone near us was the distant sound of gunshots, as the shooting was allowed in this area at the time. And the only things alive in the area that we could see that were larger than a bird were the grazing cattle caged in by a nearby fence. So one of the main activities we would be participating in was trapping coyotes. For those of you who don't know, coyotes don't require a tag to kill, and you can hunt as many as you want, as they are extremely quick to reproduce. And so we set up the traps about 500 yards away from our campsite in a valley that a creek was running through. We could tell that this was a bottleneck for the coyotes to travel through, as many game trails were coming down to this checkpoint, and we were certain at least one coyote would come through. And so we set up the traps and then headed back to our campsite. We got back and the sun is beginning to set. Being in the middle of the May, the sun was out in full force where we were at, approaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and we were already exhausted from hauling around the heavy trapping gear, but this heat was just making it worse. It got to the point where the only thing we could do was sit in with little shade that we had and then wait for a couple of hours until the sun was down. A few hours later, the sun finally sets and the temperature begins to drop, and so we search around with our flashlights to find any dry sticks and also dead sagebrush on the ground, all with the cows mooing in the background. And once we get our fire lit, we sit around and are laughing, reminiscing on old times and just being happy to be around each other. And a few minutes go by and we're all just sitting around the campfire in the silence when we hear a strange, high-pitched whine. I remember S asking R what that sound was, and R tells him it was probably a coyote or something. And so the sound keeps persisting, and whatever was making it was getting close to the campfire. Every 10 or so seconds, the creature would call out. We went from laughing at it to just being confused the more we heard it and the closer it got. And then when we hear this thing call once again, probably about 40 feet or so in front of me, it's silent for about only 5 seconds this time, and not even kidding, we heard the same call, but this time from only like 20 feet behind me. This might not sound scary to a lot of you, but at that moment, it was chilling. We all scrambled up and we were feeling paranoid. So R assembles his 22 that he brought with us. And then out of nowhere, this creature is back to where it once was, about 40 or so feet in front of me again. We're all spooked and confused how this is even happening. And so while Q, R, and S are talking, I pull out my phone, tell them to shut up, and I try to record the sound that this thing is making. Take a listen. And so he posts actually a link showcasing whatever was recorded. And so we all decide to try to follow that noise and see if we can find anything. It seemed to be leading us somewhere, but we weren't sure. As we followed, this thing was keeping a good distance between us, no less than 40 feet at the time. And so we crossed the cow fence, which was quite the task because it was coated in barbed wire. It's a bit strange too because the creature crossed through it without any sound. It kept pointing us in a direction that was leading to another creek, but as soon as we got there, we heard it now about 50 feet up a hill, which no animal could have done that in that short of a time period without making any noise. And so we got shaken up by the whole thing, so we just went back to our tent. And as soon as we got up, however, Q pulled me aside and mentioned that he thought he saw something duck down when he shined his light at that hill the creature was leading us to. And so throughout the night, we kept hearing that thing circling our tent, making those whining noises the entire time. We ended up spending another night there with the same things happening, but no harm came to us. The whole thing was just super unsettling. We didn't end up catching anything on that trip either. Now, before any of you ask, I'm going to clarify some things. First, this took place in southeastern Tooele County, Utah. The place we stayed at was near a small town called Vernon. Second, we almost certain that it wasn't a cow. Cows are loud, clumsy animals. I mention this because none of us heard any movement, and even the baby cows can't move that high, at least not from the ones we heard. Also, how would they have crossed that fence? They also had to have gone through a hill to a different side of the owner's property. Third, we were completely sober during the entire campout. None of us have even done drugs or drank anything. Maybe the heat exhaustion could have had a hand in it, but that's about it. Fourth, we were able to find some coyote tracks, but we weren't sure if they were there before or after that night. Also, they were quite the distance away from the campsite, and they seemed to be going in completely the opposite direction from where the creature was taking us, so we ruled that out. Next, I didn't record the descent into the valley because I got caught up in the moment. I wasn't thinking about much other than trying to figure out what this creature was. Also, my phone was very close to dying. Next, it was most likely a coyote. That's what we thought at first, but coyotes don't sound like that. They also usually travel in packs and are extremely loud. They sound more like high-pitched dog barks. And then the next thing, there's a chance it was a bird. That's the theory that I'm trying to tell myself, and it's just strange enough because no other birds were out that night. And then next, we are fairly certain it was just one creature, but the truth is, we don't know for sure. But I'm going to assume that there was just one because the sound never played at the same time from two different areas. Also, when we heard it from directly behind me, it never came from there again, only straight in front of me, leading us to that creek and beyond. And then lastly, I am very skeptical it was some kind of skinwalker, but I honestly have no clue anymore. I did a little research on the area. We stayed a few months after this whole ordeal. The area we were camping at was old Coyote territory before the Spaniards came to the valley back in the 1600s. I looked, and there are hardly any Coyote legends that I could piece to something like this. So I've been trying to do some research, and I haven't found anything like this. Does anyone have any ideas as what this could have been? And then that's it. That's essentially what this user ends this very long encounter. So lots of good stuff to talk about. and I'll share it here. In this case, this happening first in Utah. I don't recall any of the other stories happening there, but definitely still it's prime territory for a unique encounter like this. Also, this is the first time where it's almost like a skinwalker is toying with somebody when it comes to it being in one point and then moving quickly to another point. The impression I got was almost like it was teleporting. The fact that you could have something like this be 40 feet away, then 20 feet close, and then 50 feet away, all in the span of a couple of seconds, again, with no one seeing it, no one hearing it. Like when it comes to movement, you would think that with all that sagebrush and all the stuff that's there on the ground, you would hear something moving, especially footsteps, very quick footsteps. But no, it was just a dead silence outside of that whining, that eerie whining as well. And it seemed like, again, it was toying with them, knowing that it could see them, but they can't see it. And it was almost trying to lead them somewhere. I got the impression, too, that where it was leading them was maybe to get lost. Like, in other words, purposely get far away from the campsite and be in that dreaded area out there in the desert where all of a sudden you don't know where you are. You think you're about to get back to your location, but then you suddenly realize this doesn't look familiar, and then you start second guessing yourself, and before you know it, hopelessly lost. And I'm thinking that's what this thing was trying to do. Like it was purposely trying to get them away. And that was something else. Plus, another clue that this could be a skinwalker is the fact that they stated this was a bottleneck of coyotes. This area was supposed to be, and yet they didn't run into any coyotes. So whatever this thing was, it was absolutely scaring those coyotes out there. As I mentioned before, when I was over there at the Pioneer Saloon near Las Vegas, but over there in Good Springs, Nevada, I've run into coyotes out there in the pitch black darkness, and it is scary. It is. It's almost like all you see is nothing out there, just pure pitch black darkness at night, but you hear them. You hear their telltale barks that are nearby. You hear the scuttling of them nearby. You can't see a single thing, but they absolutely can see you. And so that's pretty scary stuff. So imagine something like this involving this situation where you have this, I don't know, thing, whatever it is, coming about, trying to do something, and causing this whining of sorts. But it's crazy stuff because I could totally picture in my head this happening in the pitch black darkness. They can't see it, but they're wondering what's happening. And then, of course, it happens a second night, too. But pretty scary stuff. But if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. Maybe someone has another encounter there in Utah, something else that stands out. Maybe if this territory is more on the lines of a reservation, then please, I'd love to hear as far as that type of local encounter. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.